Hi, everyone. This is Jose Palomino with another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. And our guest today is Jake Dunlap. And Jake is a sales expert. That term gets used a lot. But what Jake brings is a fresh perspective to selling in 2021 and beyond. So it's some important stuff. Listen closely as we welcome Jake to our show. Well, welcome, Jake, to the Revenue Throughput Podcast.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jake, just for our listeners to provide the best context is who do you serve and what do you do for them?
Sure. So we serve / I serve primarily, at the end of the day, it's salespeople or revenue teams. But, most of the people that we're talking to are, leaders within a sales organization, CEOs that are trying to optimize, how they generate more net new meetings, how they drive more sales, and how they better create a customer experience and journey to optimize the best outcome for both parties. So anything in that value chain of the customer journey, we are here to help organizations make it more effective, not just for their own sales team, but for the customer too, which I think is more critical than ever right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the things I've heard you speak about is the idea of the sales being a process of bringing two parties together. Like you really moved away from, and often in sales it gets talked about like it's going to war. We're gonna win. Which is really like win lose. So talk just a little bit about maybe the two-party mindset.
Well, I think it's one of the weird parts about sales, right? Think about sales, like if you really zoom out, it's like this weird chess game between two people who actually want to come up with a good outcome, right? Like you don't go to, somewhere to buy something and want it to be awkward and weird or confrontational. And the salesperson certainly doesn't want that, but we've built this construct almost that's very seller. And candidly, a lot of it just comes down to how we built sales methodologies. And there was a world when the salesperson had all the knowledge, right? You couldn't buy a big screen. You had to go to Best Buy and talk to someone about it, right? Because I couldn't find everything I wanted to find on, online. And as we move to a world where people have more access to information than ever before, I think that what people are looking for today is someone who can be a guide, who's an expert, who knows their space really well, and can help somebody to make the right decision. And I think sales has always been about that at its core. But I feel like as we move forward into 2020, rest of 2021, 2022, that idea of the salesperson being an expert and a guide and a support person, not doesn't mean laying over, and consulting them, I think is just going to be required. I think customers are good. They're not going to want to talk to anybody if you can't add value, right? Like it's like buying an airline ticket today, or like even buying a house, right? It's like, yuck. Let me just go do my own searches. Let me do my own information. And I think sales is, B2B sales in particular just hasn't maybe caught up to that yet.
Hey, pardon the interruption. It'll just be a beat. We want to tell you about something that's really exciting, and it might be very exciting to you if you're the owner, CEO, leader of a B2B company, roughly with $2 to $20 million in revenue, and you feel a little bit stuck. You know what I mean? Sales are a little flat, maybe even declining, challenged. Margins are being squeezed. Sales cycles seem to be lengthening, and lead flow is uncertain. We've designed a program based on over a dozen years of us doing exactly this for many B2B companies. It's called the Competitive Edge Program. And you can learn more about it at valueprop.com/edge. Tells you all about the program. It's a 90-day program, really focused on helping you sharpen your value proposition, aligning your value delivery, making sure your marketing program is doing what it has to do if you're in B2B, which is generate opportunities, and make sure your sales process is tight so that you can convert those opportunities into sales. So with that note, let's get back to another exciting episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. So it's interesting because one of the great truisms in B2B sales is that people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And a little while ago, you put something out on your LinkedIn feed. And it caught my eye because it caught a lot of people's attention, where you said that sales in 2021 and beyond into the future is not really going to be about relationship building. So you so we have this two-party thing we talked about, but then you have this idea that maybe relationships, at least as it's been talked about historically, is no longer the centerpiece of a sales process. Could you just expand on that? Because I think that's controversial to a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think you teed it up well, which is that, what is it? No, like, and trust, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
Here's the difference. Let's just think about our worlds 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Versus how much stuff we have going on now. How many meetings do we have? How many responsive, and it's not just that we're getting older. It's that there's just a lot more stuff. You got Microsoft Teams and Slack pinging 24/7. You got emails. And so, having a relationship with a salesperson and in a, hey, this is a good guy or woman. Like, this is somebody who I just don't think we have time for it, nor do I think people particularly want it, right? Like a real estate agent to me is a perfect example. Like, I think there's a very specific use case for real estate agent, which is the last mile. I think there's a stat I saw a while ago, which like 70-something% of homes were found by the buyer. And I just think what's happened is the relationship that buyers want, not what sellers want, what customers want, is they want someone who can guide, like, I mentioned this a little bit, and shepherd them. So when you say know, like, and trust, I don't think you have to know them before. I don't think you have to even particularly like them. It can't be I don't know if I can cuss or not, but it can't be a, what, right?
You can't repel people.
You can't be, arrogant. But I want trust is really what matters. Do I trust this person? And I'm sure I could tell you, hey, is there somebody in your network and that, and maybe even somebody that you hang out with, or maybe not, hang out with them, but that you don't like necessarily love them or really like them, but man, would you let them watch your kids? Right? Like, at the end of the day, what customers want is a solution to an outcome, or they want an outcome. They want a solution to a problem. And I think if you focus your relationship on, hey, I'm here to provide a solution for you. I'm here to be an outcome provider. Now, look, if they end up being friends afterward, or they know or like you later, but they don't have to know you up front. I don't even think they have to like you, like in the traditional sense of like, this person's friendly versus like, wow, this person's adding a lot of value. I think they have to feel that like this person adds a ton of value, but I don't think that it's necessary anymore for them to be like, man, this is somebody I really want to go have a steak and golf with. I think that is 90s, 2000, early 2000s mindset.
And beyond, going back even further, right?
Yeah.
Where it was only done through people you met at the club. And
Exactly.
that's how you chose who to do business with. But as I've often noted, buyers have gone to buying school too. So like, they're buying a lot smarter. And
there's more information available, right? Like, there's some of this stuff you couldn't compare 2 or 3 softwares or products. You couldn't do it. You have to call, you got to sit through a demo or a walkthrough. You couldn't do that you couldn't do it 5 years ago, let alone 10 or 15 years ago. And because of that, buyers are like, look, I mean, just think about anything in your life. Like, how annoying is it when you can't get next day delivery on Amazon now? Like, how bougie are we to where, like, now that we can't get, so think about the B2B sales and how clunky that is. Oh, right. Yuck. Right. Like, the barriers that are put up and the different, kind of processes and different people you've got to talk to. It just feels old. It feels not relevant to this new world that we live in, where we want access to information. We want it now. We want to be able to self-guide, and we don't want to have to build a relationship with someone every time we want to hit click to buy. And I think, I don't think that there's certain types of sales, et cetera, that will continue to be very heavily relationship, but there are other types of sales that I think you're going to see get cannibalized by more of a click to buy scenario, sub 15,000, sub 20,000, where it's like, yeah, I need to talk to a salesperson at like the very end around implementation and things like that. But, I can do a lot of what I could do before. I can look at your demo online. I can forward it to the team. I can share it. I don't need to do the things that you used to have to do, 10 years ago.
Right. So somebody I talked to recently put it this way. He says, you really want that consult call, if possible, to confirm what the buyer already hopes is true, not to convince them. So the idea is that, like, at the end, like you said, that last mile, they're showing up and they're saying, okay, I've already done all the research. I believe your Razzlestat 9000 will mix the berries at this rate per million or whatever. Is that true? And what's my guarantee? Or something that's maybe didn't get covered.
That's right.
Just to be double safe. But that raises a question here, Jake. So in a buyer-led world, right? The buyer is initiating, they know they have a need, they go out and pursue it and so on. What if you're bringing something to the market that a lot of buyers don't yet know they need?
Sure.
So like they're not looking for your category or they're not looking for your particular solution, but you've developed something that once people see it and give it give it a little bit of a try, they're going to go, oh my goodness, of course I need a Xerox machine, going way back into 1940. Nobody thought they needed a Xerox machine or a word processor or any number of things that now are everyday necessities. So in today's selling environment, how does a sales team that has to sell something ahead of customer awareness do that without relationship building?
Well, it's a good question. Let me think. I think there's a couple different like angles to think about this from. The first is, one, people do this all the time, right? Like outbound sales and reaching out to people who didn't know they had a problem and creating the need is why sales exists. If not, it would be called information giving or order taking. So if you don't want to be in sales and you don't think it's your job to help people to make the right decision, right? Of course. Mm-hmm. But also to guide them toward, if it is a good fit, then, that this is the right thing for you to do. So, I think we're in an era right now where there's so much information out there. There's so much noise out there. And I think one of the biggest ways that sales teams and CEOs, they should be on LinkedIn, producing content for their industry or TikTok or Instagram, wherever your customers are. I'll just use LinkedIn as a proxy. Producing content about the industry. What are trends? What's happening? Why are we doing it this way? There's a report, it was last year now, but a company called Gong put out that was the number one call to action that got a positive reply was like, let me know if it's okay. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but something to the effect of, instead of like, can you meet Thursday at 2? It was, hey, I noticed this thing. I noticed there's some opportunity. Is it okay if I send you a couple of pieces that I think are most relevant to you? Going back to that concept of self-guiding. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can make people aware. I think posting on LinkedIn is the easiest, freest, easiest way to grow a network. Organic traffic's free. And LinkedIn still gives you a lot of views for free, which is great. I generated well over what would have been $1 million+ in free advertising last year just for views on posts. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to create awareness. And I think buyers want that too. They might not want to get on that call, but it's an easier yes to say, hey, Jake, yeah, that's okay. That's interesting. Yeah, send me a little bit more on that. And then obviously then you come over the top with that, right? Like oh yeah, did that resonate? Oh, cool. Let's set up some time to meet. So yeah, that's right. That's kind of where I think this idea of creating awareness, it's like, it's a long and a short game. And a lot of people don't have the patience to play the long game like they should. And they instead are like, it's all call to action, ask, no give. But I think we're moving to a give world, not an ask world.
Well, that's interesting. And I love the phrasing on that, Jake, a give world, not an ask world. So now somebody who's on quota and he's thinking, did you tell my boss about that? We're in the give world, not the ask world, because I'm being asked, if I'm hitting my numbers every month, right? So what kind of changes at a high level, what kind of changes does an organization, a typical sales organization, there's let's say chief revenue officer, a couple of area VPs, regional VPs, and then staff, maybe 100-person sales organization. Very typical in a, let's say, mid-market a software company. If listening to you, they're saying, okay, this is starting to make sense. I kind of get it. This is what our experience is.
Maybe.
What are the big shifts that have to take place, either culturally, procedurally, for them to start? Probably not an overnight shift, but they have to do something.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody about this, I think it was yesterday, the day before, where I don't know when we stopped focusing on the midterm and long term. Meaning, if I think about my day, I've got this kind of, I call it 80-15-5. 80% of my activities are focused on the things that need to get done this day, this month, this quarter. 15% are maybe next quarter, the quarter after, and 5% of my time is spent on the long term, a year or whatever out. Mm-hmm. And I'm not always perfect, right? Sometimes the week's more like 90-0 or 99-0 or whatever. But I feel like as a leader and as an individual, this is the mindset you need to have, that, yeah, you're spending most of your time focused on hitting that number, but you're also spending a little bit of time making it easier to hit the number in 6 months. Doesn't that sound a lot better, right? As opposed to like always going through this grind. I remember when I first inherited the sales team, what would have been? It would have been like March or April of the year. I said, I've got till the end of the year to turn this thing around. I didn't put the pressure, and that's the job of leaders, that the team, that you're dealing with that too. But if you're an individual, you should be listening to what I'm saying as well too, that you need to be building awareness within your target market. So then it makes it easier in 6 months, and then it'll be even easier in 12 months. It'll be even easier in 18 months. It'll be even easier in 24 months, to where, as you build that awareness, and again, and maybe there is some, maybe I'll say like, hey, do you know somebody? Right. And that was like, and trust. Maybe I can go back to know. I don't think they have to know you, but can't hurt if you're a smart person putting out interesting thoughts. Right. So, I think for a lot of salespeople, you got to have that mindset. What are you doing today to make yourself, delayed gratification, right? What are you doing today? Are you doing anything today or this week to make your life easier 6 months from now? And if not, you're never going to get off the hamster wheel.
Well, I love the framing of that though, Jake, which is you're not just delaying. It's not like I'm not selling now. It's you're paving the way so that you can actually take the supply trucks through the road, right? Like, it's like you have to pay at some point, or else it's just going to be all like rocky roads and dangerous, right? So,
yeah, that's right. You keep dealing flat tires, you keep doing with that, or it's like every day you paint an extra, you pave an extra 10 feet. And then guess what? After 4 or 5 months, you pick your head up and you got a road.
Right.
And I think too many people are not thinking with that mindset. It's like, I've got to do this, or they're blaming their boss for it. Well, my boss said I got to do 100 activities. Well, great, do that. And then spend an hour after work connecting with people on LinkedIn. This is about your career. I think too many, it's really interesting. There's like a phenomenon right now of like people expecting the companies to do all this, even though people leave after a year and a half or 2 years. Mm-hmm. You're responsible for your own professional development. You're responsible for managing your day-to-day. You're responsible for knowing your specific numbers. I don't need a boss to tell me what my numbers are, right? I've been like that since the very beginning, since I got into sales. Like, I knew my own numbers. I didn't need someone to tell me to enter data into Salesforce. I had to enter data into Salesforce so I could get better and improve over time. And so I think people also, as you're listening to this, you go take action. Don't wait for your VP. Look, we're all like, most of you are remote. Your VP doesn't even know what you're doing half the day. Do whatever you want. Do whatever you think you should do. I was talking to like a sales development team, right? Where they're setting meetings for people, right? I'm like, you want to get into sales? Like, why aren't you just taking calls? Like, why don't you just take a sales call? Well, what do you mean? I'm like, you want to get into sales? You have been in the role for 9 months or 10 months. You think you're ready. Just take the discovery call. Who's going to ever know? Think you're going to get fired? No, like, I just feel like, again, too many people are sitting around waiting for opportunity, and opportunity comes, when you also make it happen.
Well, I think that's fascinating, because there is a sense, and obviously with the advent and the ubiquitous nature of CRM, where organizations and leadership teams they think that they're getting visibility. They all want to have the crystal ball. They all want to know what next quarter is going to look like, what next month's going to look like, what tomorrow's going to look like. So there's a lot of pressure on the data, and the data is important. Obviously, you got to slice and dice and you have the data, but it can create, and it's interesting as you described it, I could easily see that creating a very passive culture, that someone else is on this. And it's like you said, it's very simple, and it's true. Most people are like, not, who would know? Who would know you took a call and you actually came up, you advanced the sale. That's really fascinating. And it also speaks to really encouraging people to take a little bit more risk. And it's interesting, people getting into sales careers, but don't want any risk. And I'm thinking like, dude, you're in sales. This like, it's in the job description.
Where is this why isn't this lead qualified lead? What do you think this job is? Again, it's not called order taking, right? If it's order taking, I'm going to slash your commission by 85%.
Right.
Like, I think, which by the way, I think might happen too. I think the way that we're going to do sales comp in the future, I think is different as we try to create more awareness, and salespeople are, coming in later in the process. I think we're going to need to do something around commissions. We really haven't changed kind of the concept, even though we now have account managers who actually run the relationship. It used to be a salesperson did all of it. And maybe many of you still do all of it. So I think there's some comp plan details as well. But, again, the message is, if you really want to be a professional, you need to know your own numbers. You need to know how many activities it takes you, not worry about what the bar is.
Well, and Jake, just in the time we have remaining, I did want to just explore a little bit and to see if any of your thoughts would you shape them any differently if you're looking at a smaller, like owner-led business, your classic B2B
Yeah.
manufacturer? They may only have 2 sales reps, or the owner's the sales rep.
Yeah, of
What's
course.
changed in their world?
I think the need to have more well, maybe if I zoom out too, it's that they're used to doing face to face. And so I've been talking to a lot of companies and CEOs, like what you mentioned, around this concept of a digital experience. It used to be you got a chance to shake a hand, meet someone face to face, or whatever it is. What are you doing to make your process an experience? Whether that's, do you send them a piece of content ahead of time? Do you have a sample that you can send? And so by the time you have the meeting, your manufacturer, that it's sitting on their desk, or their home office, right? So I think if I was I am, right, I run my own consulting company. We've got 40 plus people, but I still do a lot of sales. For me, I think about differentiated experience. That what is it like to do business with us? And I think that's going to be a big competitive differentiator for a lot of companies in the future.
Right, because all things being equal, if I think 3 parties can all give me roughly the equal result, then my preference.
Who do I trust? Who do I trust is actually
right?
going to deliver the outcome? Right. And that's what a lot of it boils down to.
Wow. Well, Jake Dunlap, thank you again for taking the time to be with us today. This is some really great insight, and I think food for thought for a lot of people listening in. So if somebody wanted to know more about you, contact you, or more about what your firm does, where should they go?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, feel free, reach out on LinkedIn. It's just Jake Dunlap /Jake Dunlap. You can go to jakedunlap.com as well too, which it almost sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but it allows me to centralize everything.
Sure.
And I just launched my podcast there as well, which is the Jake Dunlap Show, where we actually interview CEOs and celebrities talking about their journey, which I think, it's been a kind of a fun. We launched it literally 3 months ago, and it's just wild. These wildly successful people running billion-dollar businesses, and man, it's the same stuff. It's, we're all dealing with the same stuff, and we're all shaped by these formative years of like, my dad yelled at me about this thing, and that put this chip on my shoulder, and now I'm this like boss person. So definitely check out the podcast. I'm really proud of it, and I think it's turned out great.
All right, we'll include that in our show notes as well. So Jake,
Great.
Thanks again for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. I enjoyed it. This is fun.
Okay, thank you. Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. If you like this episode, and if you like the series, make sure you subscribe below. And also, if you liked it, please do review it. When people are looking for something exciting to listen to, especially the kind of content we're bringing, which is practical insights for B2B companies, this is a place and a free resource that they can take advantage of. Let them know about it with your review. So subscribe, review, enjoy. Thanks again.